Hello and welcome to this Fumetto panel, Creative Superspreaders, Comics During Lockdown Times. While large parts of the world have come to a pause and people are struggling with the consequences of the pandemic, a number of artists actually have been creative, and some of them even more creative than ever before. And during this panel today at Fumetto, we have three artists who have been extremely creative last year. And I'm very happy today to welcome here Moran Mozart, Kati Rickenbach, and Samuel Schumacher. My name is Lars von Törne, and we are going to introduce our three guests very soon in more detail. And then we are going to have a closer look at what they created over the last year. And they brought us a lot of really impressive work, and maybe we can even learn a few things how to handle a crisis like that, and maybe even come out of it creative or more creative than before. So in order to introduce our guests, Moran, I would like to start with you. Maybe you could briefly tell us a bit about yourself. You are an artist who is being highlighted, whose work is being highlighted at Fumetto this year. Here we see a publication, but you've also been very present recently, partly because of the book we see here on the left. Maybe you can briefly introduce yourself to the audience.
Hello everyone. I'm really happy to be here because Fumetto has a special place in my heart for so many reasons. So first of all, I'm actually a French artist, but I lived in Geneva for a few years, and I'm actually planning on moving back someday. If they let me. And so I like to say that I'm a bit of an adopted Swiss in my heart. So yes, I do comics mostly, and graphic novels would be the best word, I guess, for lack of a better one. Comics is just fine, I guess. I consider myself a better author than an illustrator, but I do illustration as well. I think I shine most when some narration is involved, let's say. So I was honored and super lucky to be invited in Buenos Aires, thanks to Fumetto and Filba. So Filba is an Argentine literature festival. And thanks to Fumetto, I did a residency of almost 3 months in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, let's say. And so this is what you're going to see during the digital exhibition. So some of the works I did there, because unfortunately I wanted to show more things, but unfortunately COVID happened. And also during the residency, I had to finish my book Tons because I had a deadline. And so I worked on the residency in Argentina and on my book at the same time. And the book was released last year in August. And I was extremely lucky as well to get an award at Angoulême Festival for this book, the Revelation Award. So everything is going great right now.
Yes, and we will have a closer look at these two works and a number of other works of yours in just a few minutes. But first of all, Kati, I would like to ask you to introduce yourself a bit as well. You've been the author of many books and comics that have been presented at Fumetto over the years. Maybe know you that well. So Kati, maybe you could briefly introduce yourself to our audience as well.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Kati Rickenbach, and I'm a Swiss illustrator and cartoonist probably since the day I was born, many years ago. Before the virus hit Europe, 1 year ago, I was working on my new graphic novel. I was actually I think I already had 100 pages done of storyboarding. It was great fun to work on this new book. Then suddenly Switzerland closed all its schools, and I had to stop drawing because I have 2 kids, and I had to look after them and homeschool them during the first lockdown together with my husband. And anyway, the reality itself felt much more exciting than fiction. I don't know if I should continue,
Well,
but this is like the beginning of this story.
yes, and there's a lot to look at that you produced during this exceptional time that we will have a look at in a minute. But first, I'd quickly like to hand over the microphone to Samuel. Samuel, you're also a distinguished illustrator, cartoonist, comic strip artist. Maybe you can also briefly introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Sam. I'm living in Zurich, and I do comics. Like I think I would prefer to only do comics, but there's also some stuff you have to do to earn money. Yeah, and I'm really happy to be here and to talk about the stuff I did during the first lockdown. I did some comics.
Yes, we will have a look at in a minute. But first, I'd like to go back to Moran and talk a bit about your work. As you said, Moran, you've been very present with your works through Angoulême and the award you won there. But since we're at Fumetto here and people will have a chance to actually purchase your Fumetto publication that you created in Buenos Aires and look at your work during this festival, maybe you can tell us a tiny bit more about this work. Why Buenos Aires and what did you do there that led to this publication that we're showing a few images from here?
So I actually didn't choose to go there. I was invited, which is incredible. And I never thought beforehand that I would be able to go to Southern America. Well, so I'm so sorry, my dog is playing around, so you might hear a bit of squeaks. And so, yeah, so Buenos Aires was an incredible surprise. So since it was such a surprise and I had no knowledge of Southern American culture, and when it comes to culture, Argentina is a really it's really particular. It's a really particular case because there is such a mix of cultures there. So when I was there, I thought I would only take the time of the residency to observe mostly and not try and work too fast on anything so as not to be too stereotypical or to just make something that didn't have that didn't have any particular interest. I just wanted to take in as much as I could. So I did a journal, a travel diary. So that seems really basic, but I don't have diaries anymore. I don't do any of them. So to me, it was actually a very interesting exercise. Also, as far as writing goes, I don't write that much. And writing in English, so I wrote in English in my diary because I thought, like, for Fumetto, I don't speak German. People here speak Spanish and I speak French, but so let's just write in English so that everybody can read it. And so yeah, writing in English was a really great experience. For some reason, I was less self-conscious, and so I wrote more. So that was really interesting. Yeah, I was very alone. When I was there, I spent most of my time alone to try and observe as much as I could by myself, like have a personal point of view. And so it was a very contemplative kind of journey.
Yeah, and here we see some images that you caught there and that you put together in, yeah, sort of a diary style, but some of the elements almost form a story, and it came together as a publication that now can actually be purchased, a little booklet, I understand, yes. Right? And you said while you were there, you also worked on finishing Tons. And that is a book that created quite a few waves, partly because you received the Prix de Révélation at the Angoulême Festival, and partly also beyond that. It's a really beautiful book that talks about a young dancer and his career, but it talks about a lot of other issues too, very modern issues in a way, but it also goes back in dancing history. This, if I understand correctly, was created just before the coronavirus pandemic hit the world, right?
Actually, I started working on I started working on this book in late 2016 or early 2017. I can't remember, but it was actually for my diploma in 2018. I was studying in Strasbourg at the moment, back then I mean. And I actually the book was supposed to be released in June of 2020, and that didn't happen because of the pandemic. And it got released in August, which was a good time to be released, so it was okay. But yeah, so it was this book was done and written and drawn in a time where Corona wasn't even a thing. Nobody knew about it. Oh, sorry. My dog is being a bad boy. Okay. Sorry. So yeah, it's about a time where Corona just wasn't even an idea.
Yeah. And I'm just wondering, this book, how much did the impact of the book, how much was that affected by the Corona year? You said it was published in the summer, so that was a time when maybe even some book presentations were possible. But then in Angoulême, when you got received the award and probably even more public attention, all of a sudden people weren't able to meet each other again. How much was the impact of the book maybe affected by Corona, or maybe not so much?
So the book in itself, it was okay because, as I said, the release date, even though it was postponed, was quite good because it was the literary I don't know how to say that in English. Rentrée, so back to school, but it's not school. So all the books that get released in September after the summer. So that's a good time for a book to be released because people are actually waiting for what's going to be released. So the book didn't suffer in itself of the coronavirus, but I did because I was kind of planning on my book to be released in early June. And I was counting on it to, I don't know, for the book to be sold, hopefully, or to maybe use the fact that my book was out to seek more work, I don't know, to look for work, to look for career opportunities, but I couldn't do any of that. I couldn't look for a job, not even a day job, because everything was closed at the time. And so I didn't have any income for 3 months because everything was just suspended in time. And I had books at home. I got a stock of books, and it was like, this is my book, but nobody else can see it, and it was weird. So the book wasn't impacted, but I was, and hopefully everything turned out okay. But for 3 or 4 months, I was super stressed. I had no money, and I had nothing to hope for because I couldn't even look for a day job because everything in the service industry was not happening, and there were no schools either. So that was a stressful time.
Yeah. And well, you were still very creative. And before we have a look at some of the work you still created, I would like to ask just one question, because I read this book and I was very impressed, not only by how beautifully it was drawn and how it
Thanks.
captures these movements of the dancers. Here we see the young man Uli, who's the main character, who wants to make his way into the world of dancing. And then it's going back in decades into the history of modern dancing, and it talks about very modern topics at the same time. You talk about racism, you talk about gender relationships, you talk about queer life, queer difficulties of living a queer life. So it's very modern, but at the same time, it also goes back in history. And I would just like to wonder, how did you come up with this subject, and how much is it also a story that you wanted to tell because it can tell us something about the present time?
Actually, so I got interested in the late 50s quite late in my life. but it turns because we all have this image when we don't know anything about the 50s, we all think that it's a very backwards era and very conservative, but it's actually not true. And if you take a closer look, you can see that the 50s is somehow the era when the youth culture was created. So this is when young people were allowed to be in this in between, that is youth, so not young adults, and just having their own music, their own lifestyle, way of dressing, and their own culture, basically. And so when you take a closer look at this, so the late 50s, you can see that it's just crazy culturally and artistically how people were freeing themselves from all that was very conservative at the time. So that's why I was interested in that time of history, artistically and culturally. And yeah, so I am a straight and cisgender woman, but I was always really interested in LGBTQIA plus cultures, because I don't know, I always felt really touched by gender issues, and I don't know, I'm still trying to figure it out, but ever since I was a teenager, I was always really close to the community without being a part of it myself. So it was important for me to talk about these issues, because these are things I try to educate myself about. And so gender, racism, all of it, let's say. And it turns out that when you actually educate yourself on the subject, you can see that most of the texts that we study today were written much earlier than we think, in feminism, in anti-racism. And so, for instance, James Baldwin, who was a Black American writer who wrote about against racism, and he wrote, he was gay actually as well. He wrote really powerful books in the 50s that are still, that are still very much, whatever he said is still. Sorry, I'm having trouble phrasing my thoughts. So everything is very accurate today still. And that happens with feminism and also, LGBTQIA cultures. Well, of course, a lot of has changed, but still, you can. The thoughts are pretty much the same, and so that's what is really interesting, is that we don't know enough about this time. That is the end of the 50s.
Yeah, and that is really nicely captured in your book, which actually is out in English too. So if people want to read it in English, that's possible. And let's just look a little closer at other works you did, because you said first it was very difficult for you after publishing this book, and then the lockdown hit, but then you still managed to pursue a few projects, continue with a few projects, or start new ones. And you gave us a few examples. Maybe you can tell us what we are seeing here.
So there is this French collective that's called Ciné Croquis, so cinema and sketching. And they invite artists to draw 5 pictures captured from movies, and then people on the page, anybody can try and find what movie it is and win the illustration. So that's some of the things. I think I did that, so the Ciné Croquis, before the pandemic, but I pursued the exercise during the pandemic, because cinema is a huge part of my work and a huge inspiration for me. So I thought, so I didn't have any work. I had nothing to do but to raise my dog. So I just got my puppy last year in January. So he was really small when the pandemic started, and it took me a lot of time to actually raise my dog. And the rest of the time I had nothing to do because I didn't have any work. And so I was just sending resumes everywhere. And I thought, well, now is the time to just draw and do stuff. And so that was a good way to draw again for myself. So the first movie we saw was My Own Private Idaho by Gus Van Sant. So this is River Phoenix professing his love. That's my favorite scene. The next one is, sorry, I don't remember the name of the director, but it's one of the most recent adaptation of, I'm so sorry, I haven't spoken English in a while, so it's the English book in the moors. And he's called Heathcliff, and there was a song by Kate Bush about it. A very famous song. Sorry,
Wuthering Heights.
Yes, thank you.
I was a Kate Bush fan.
Yes, so this is one of their most recent adaptation of Wuthering Heights. With I can't remember the name of the director, but she's an amazing director, so I just recommend all of her works. Yeah. And that was just a very, very beautiful movie. Scenery wise, the landscapes were just crazy beautiful, and that was so inspiring when you were stuck at home to just watch gorgeous landscapes. That was really, that was the breath of fresh air.
This is the third example of this, right?
Yeah, so so this was done before the pandemic because I actually went, so it was, did I see it in this theater? I think it's, this one is called Felice. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's by Lazzaro Felice. By a young Italian director that's who's also an amazing director. She's just so incredibly talented, and yes, that's it.
Maybe we can just jump on to.
Okay, so that was done during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I tried watching as many movies as I could because that, as I said, I needed to kind of jumpstart my inspiration. Actually, it taught me a lot. The pandemic, the lockdown taught me a lot about how to look for inspiration and how to get inspired. I learned a lot about how to make myself, put myself in a position where I can, what I want to work. So I watched a lot of movies, which is the one thing that works for me when you can't go anywhere. The thing that works most is walking in nature, but I couldn't. So this is the piano lesson. Again, I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of Jane Campion. Okay. So yeah, the piano lesson by Jane Campion, which is, I had seen it as a teenager, and I think I didn't get it back then, and I rewatched it last year, and it's such an amazing movie. It's incredibly well crafted. Everything is just perfect, and it tells so many different stories. So yeah, so I was just mesmerized by how beautiful it was, and trying to capture it, the ambience, maybe the atmosphere.
And while we look at another image, I would like to ask you, as an artist who normally would maybe go out there and show your work in galleries or at exhibitions or at festivals, or you would meet with publishers and your readers in real life, how much can you make up for it by using, for example, social media, or how do you stay in touch with your potential customers and your audience?
I have to say it wasn't that much of a change for me, lifestyle-wise, because I live quite a sedentary lifestyle. I'm mostly home. I work from home because I can't afford a studio space in Paris. It's too expensive. And also, as I said, I had just gotten my puppy back then, so that took all of my time. So the lockdown was, I don't know, it didn't affect me that much as far as meeting people is concerned. I spent all my time raising my puppy, and I was able to walk him around. So I did get some fresh air. I did meet people when I was walking my dog.
Mhm.
So that was okay. That wasn't much of a change. It didn't last enough to long enough for it to actually be a change when it comes to exhibitions and stuff. I don't do exhibitions every 2 weeks, so I was okay.
Yeah.
It was hard to look for work though, because nobody knew what was going to happen and when, so nobody was hiring even illustrators. So, but apart from that,
for example, if I understand correctly, this is a commissioned work or a collaboration that you did that still worked out. Maybe you can tell us a little about these pages or the sequence that we see here.
Yeah, so this is something I enjoyed doing tremendously. So this is for the Chamber Orchestra of Geneva. And they had this project of working with illustrators and authors. And each one of the illustrators and authors were to illustrate, well, actually, we're supposed to do comics or comics related work about one of their events of the season. So my event was about, the name was Heroines, and it was mostly centered around this pianist who was playing music written by men, so that was a bit confusing. But we had to work with the musicologists. I don't know if it's the same word in English. And so I talked about the general idea with the musicologist, and she enjoyed my concept, and so this happened. And I just enjoyed working in the music field so much. I was so happy to learn things about music and to just be in that kind of environment that's really precious to me.
Yeah. This is beautiful. And I'm just having a quick look at the clock because we want to make sure we don't break our timeline. I'm just going to jump over these and maybe we can have another look at them later. These are some beautiful images that one can see on your Instagram account. That's a beautiful collection of work you've been doing over the year. And we will talk about this more in a few minutes. But first, I'd like to quickly hand over the microphone to Kati Rickenbach, just to compare, Kati, how you experienced this last year compared to Moran and what happened to you. And you also brought a few images, and you said earlier, Kati, that you were planning a long graphic novel and then things changed completely. Maybe you can tell us what happened and how the images came about.
Well, after stepping back from my book project, I really desperately felt the need to earn money, because like in Paris, Zurich is not like you need a lot of money to survive in Zurich. And the situation felt clearly as a crisis with all this homeschooling and this home office in a small flat, that people are dying, the sound of the ambulance all over. And there was no financial support by the government in this early stage of the pandemic. Plus all my live jobs on stage, live performances, workshops in schools were cancelled and no longer possible, like boom. Before I actually cancelled all my money jobs because I was working on this graphic novel project. So I said, no, I don't want to have any commissioned work. This is now my artistic year. I'm working on my new book and I'll be free of all financial needs. And yes, then this happened and the whole situation like turned into the opposite. So generally, there was not much work time anyway because of the kids at home and the cooking and the tidying up and this lockdown situation we all know. So step one was to get jobs, reactivate business contacts, find possibilities to publish work, apply to all sorts of grants and Corona helps later, and join together with other people, exchange ideas how to survive, basically. So this picture here, die vielen Gesichter der Quarantäne, this was my very first Corona cartoon. Back then, in the beginning, when Corona was fun, at least a little bit, it's exactly this situation, exactly this mood. And in Switzerland, we had this press conferences of the government. And every time people were absolutely nervous about what is going to be restricted, and what is going to be happened. And it was like this big event today at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, there will be another press conference. And this is for the online magazine Republik. Mm-hmm. And the next one you have in your, yes, here, this was my first autobiographical comic about this new situation of the lockdown. When I was finally able to do it, because I have to admit, this is very unusual for me. I was a little bit in a Schockstarre for about a week. I couldn't do anything at all because I got so confused. I had to reorganize everything, and really to get back in this work mood, it took some time. And you can see actually on this second image here, that was me mostly staring at the phone and like compensate all my social interactions I have usually in my atelier with a lot of people by other digital platforms. And there was also a funny thing that the master, how to say that, the master of the school department in Zurich, he wrote some emails on a weekly basis, also with these new rules and everything. And I always imagined him in his villa over the sea in his home office, like writing to all of us stuck at home with the children and give new directions. And yeah, you don't have to forget, with all this catastrophe, with all this fear and all these changes, outside there was nice, beautiful weather. And I'm so lucky that we have a little garden. And so all these blossoms, the new plants, the trees, everything felt so different actually once you step outside of your little home office.
Mm-hmm. And then it looks like you really reached out to people and you started a lot of new work that you had not even planned before. But yeah. One thing came after another, and this seems to be another project that you then just started out of the new situation, right?
Yes, you know, not having any commissioned work to be done in a certain timeline, actually, I had allowed me much more to make cultural engagement and unpaid work and just do work I really like to do. And this was a task by the Swiss illustrator group of Balsam. They asked fellow cartoonists and illustrators to illustrate lockdown stories of other people. And they sent us some pictures and some random words to the pictures, and I tried to imagine what they people experience as a contrast to my own experiences. And this was funny because I had the WG. What is this in English? A WG, like some people, young people who are living together, and they really did, you know, yoga on the rooftop terrace. They made Instagram photos with beautiful flowers in their hair. And it was such a different perspective, which felt wonderful because my reality looked like that. I had to do the laundry and cleaning up and cooking. I still find it very hard to get to new ideas stuck in your home office, and especially when you have kids stuck in your family life, suddenly feeling like the not so fun part of the 50s. Yeah. Back then. Yes.
And you captured this atmosphere also in a longer comic that you created for the Comic Salon Erlangen, which unfortunately had to be canceled last year, but they did this project, Comics Messages from the Home Office. And you captured a bit of your family life here too. Huh?
Yes, I'm actually very lucky because I'm very much inspired by my own immediate environment, by everyday life. And for me, as I said earlier, this sudden reality like my very own reality turning slowly into a disaster movie, well, sort of, was truly inspiring and still is. And all these changes, these digital transformations, or the city of Zurich transforming into an open air fitness studio during summer, parties on Zoom, meeting people in the woods instead of a club, the police suddenly showing up in the woods, in the forest, to control if there are more than 5 people. I mean, there are always more than 5 people making parties in the woods of Zurich. So yeah, I also saw people using drugs, cocaine, next to my children at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday afternoon. That was actually great. So many realities just so close together.
And then you even tried out new art forms.
Yeah.
Zombie TV is the keyword here. Maybe you can tell us a little about what this is all about.
Yeah, this was actually my most exciting, how to say, pandemic project, because they reached out for me, this regisseur Barbara Weber, because they wanted to make a play on the Theaterspektakel in Zurich, which is a big theater festival every year. And this year they had to transform it into a kind of last year it was actually in a hybride form, means part of it digitally, part of it live, as much as it was possible. So this project, actually, they asked me to make a stage design, which I never did before. The topic of the play was the cultural scientist, professor, oh, there is a dog too here, I'm sorry. The cultural scientist, Professor Elisabeth Bromfen, who teaches at the University of Zurich. She wrote a book about the cultural history of the pandemic. That was also actually when the pandemic started. She switched her sabbatical into a new book. We tried to make a play out of it. So basically it turned out to be a cartoon lecture series. That was great because it was from the perspective of zombies, because of the pandemic transforming everyone to zombies. And she made a lot of references to movies, pandemic movies, and to all the new books, and to the pest, and to Dracula. And we kind of mixed everything together and made this story and this series out of it. It was very playful and very funny. But in the same time, it was during summer. In the summer, there was this little pause in the pandemic, as it felt now retrospective. Mm-hmm. But you could already feel or sense that there is the second wave coming up, and that's not entirely over. And I think we kind of captured that very well in this play.
Yeah. And then you brought 2 more examples of work you did after
yes.
This, I think, is a newspaper contribution, if I understand correctly, right?
Yes, I have to say at some point I got really tired of this discussion about art and culture being systemrelevant, and whether and how much money Switzerland plans to spend on its artists. This whole cultural political discussion, the pressure on the artist who has to invent the post-pandemic society, the expectation to an artist that the artist uses this free empty time, this pandemic pause, to work on the one and only masterpiece. All this was really getting on my nerves, especially if you're if you're stuck at home, there is not much room for new ideas. So yes, I draw this story for the newspaper of my home canton, Basel-Land, die Basel-Landschaftliche Zeitung. And this is a series of comics which is curated by the Cartoon Museum Basel. And it's basically someone who comes to visit, and I expect him to be a reporter of this Basel-Landschaftliche Zeitung, and I really tell him about my opus magnum, about my great work I'm doing during this lockdown, and I get rid of my kids soon. And I share my home office with my husband, so I get rid of him too, and really try to focus on this lot of work. And then in the end, he says, "Hey, stop, genug. please sign here. It's for ein Paket, which is waiting outside.
Yeah.
Ah.
And then the last project that you've been involved in is entitled Limbo Diaries.
Yes,
What's that about?
This was also, it has to do a little bit with getting annoyed by this press coverage of culture, and is culture really needed, and who goes to theaters anyway. And I really, especially here in Switzerland, I missed a little bit the perspective of the artists or the people who worked in the culture industries. So together with the regisseur Barbara Weber, we decided to make some interviews with people who are working in the cultural business, with singers, with actors, with people who are working in cultural institutions, just to a little bit see their perspective and their way of dealing with this whole situation. This was with Sibyl Aberle. She's a musician and actor from Zurich, who works very, very long in this business, in this industry. And she says, oh, I'm not having any existenzängste, fears of existence anymore, because I'm so long self-employed. I know when there is a phase you don't have to work, there will come a phase where you have work. And yeah, it was really good to speak to all these people, and it's very good also that we have this help, that we have this money we can apply for in Switzerland. This really saved a lot of us, I guess.
Yeah, and we will talk a little more about the money and a few other issues later. But first, I'd like to hand over the microphone to Sam and give us an idea, Sam, what you've been doing over the last year, because especially on your website, Oberwiesli, which is a cartoon strip, the comic strip you created, you have reflected and taken in a lot of input from the Corona time. Maybe you can tell us a little about this project.
I did some comics on Instagram before. I started doing comics on Instagram by doing a comic advent calendar, where I realized that Instagram is a nice tool to tell stories, to like comic strips in newspapers, because you always are in the feed of the people, and then they don't have to kind of look for a book or for a homepage. But I also publish it on the webpage you said. And then when the lockdown started, I thought, okay, now maybe it would be cool to do a comic with this exact universe of people I created before. So all these characters I used, I invented before for this advent calendar stories. And then me and my girlfriend, we moved to friends of ours who are living on the countryside, and they have a big house and a big garden. And so we could stay there, and it was really cool and also inspiring, because the friend of us, he did kind of help, like, I don't know the name, I don't know how to call it, but he created this kind of organization where old people could call, and then younger people would kind of take care of these people and bring them stuff. So this first story I did was about, it's really funny, like looking on it after a year. It came out, I don't know, a year ago, and it's about this is the teacher of the Oberwiesli school, and she went to buy apples. She just needed some apples, but she bought a whole kilogram because she didn't want to touch, like to take the apples on the open, I don't know. So she's just thinking about, okay, I have to, I hope that nobody would see me, because at this time in the media, it was really a thing that people would buy lots of stuff because they were afraid I don't know what the name in English, but it's called hamstern. I don't know.
Yeah.
So in the end, the bag is I don't know. Sorry, I didn't speak English in a while. But in the end, there's a family who wants to help her, and then they touch all the apples, and she in the end she thinks, okay, I just do apple pie because then I can bake the apples.
Yeah, and this reflects very well some of the fears that I guess everyone had and still probably has. So I'm wondering, these comics, and here's a second one, how much are they inspired by observations you make in your own life or when you live with your friends out there? How much does that reflect things you actually see? Or how much do you also then sometimes just make up stories because they seem to be plausible?
There was plenty of inspiration because the other friend, she was working. She had to do home office, and the whole day she was sitting in a small room and having video conferences. So that was also what inspired this story, where he does a conversation with his business people on the toilet, and there is this word, I don't know, in Swiss German you can call it both Sitzung. I don't know. It's the same word for sitting on the toilet and
meeting. You could probably call it a session. You have a session,
yes.
A session, and a session in the washroom.
Exactly. So I mean, and also with all these press conferences and stuff, and like there were always old people calling my friend and asking stuff, like ordering stuff from the food store, and there was also a doctor who was then he actually told him that he washes the fruits and the salad with some shampoo, like Putzmittel. Yes, that was the first two stories, and this is the number 47, I think. I did 48 of them, and I did it daily.
Yeah.
Except
were they also published in a newspaper or in some other form, or to what
yes.
extent did they also find maybe even a commercial platform to be presented in?
Yes, it was really cool. I wrote to a guy working on a local newspaper. At this time, I lived in Winterthur, which is close to Zurich, and I asked him. He once did an interview with me, and then I asked him if they would publish those comics online, at least. And it was really cool. They even paid me a bit of money, but I mean not that much, but it was really nice that they even that it was even worth them, because all I heard about this situation in the media from all the people was, it's really bad, we don't have any money, we all are in Kurzarbeit, and we don't have money from Werbung.
Yeah, like commercial illustration.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. I could publish those comics on the online page.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you also still did illustrations, like commercial illustrations and professional illustrations, some of which reflected the situation. Here is a group, a Wimmelbild. I'm not even sure what the English word is for that, but you'd often do these images with many people together. And here, this is one dedicated to the Corona heroes. And if I understand correctly, this, for example, was an illustration for a commercial job, right?
Exactly. This Wimmelbild, I think it's called in English, Wimmelbild.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, I think so. I did a book for my hometown, which I show later. So it was before the pandemic, and it was really cool because lots of companies think it's a nice thing to have a windmill. And this was actually a commission from the city of Winterthur, because they wanted to thank all of their like policemen and I don't know, all these jobs. So they asked me to do, and this was also really nice because I think it was a really nice gesture also to say, okay, we pay the money to a local illustrator to do something like this, and to send it to, I don't know, thousands of people working for the city.
Yeah.
So it was really nice commission.
So it sounds like you were quite lucky, because in the beginning we heard that Moran was talking about how difficult it was to get in touch with people that one could work with and that one could work for. But you were able to do a lot of, or at least a handful of commercial works that often reflected on the current situation. This, I think, was it a New Year's card or something like
yes.
that? Reflects on the situation, but also is bringing in some money, right?
I think I was really lucky because I published this Wimmel book right before the pandemic in December. And so a lot of people, no, I think it was, it's in December 19 to 20, I think. No, I don't remember. But it was really cool. And I was really lucky because it was in people's minds that I do this kind of stuff. And the cool thing for me was I had plenty of time, because normally doing such a Wimmel build like this, it's lots of work. And it was really nice because I often have stuff in the evening and I have my band, and I'm one of these people who has always too much to do. So it was really cool for me to have time and to not be able to even meet my friends or people or go to a bar and talk. So yes, I think I was really lucky that the timing for me was kind of good, and there was this time to do comics, because I had some kind of extra time because I wasn't doing anything in my free time, so I could do comics. And this was really cool because I always in the morning I did the comic, and then I sent it to the newspaper, and then in the afternoon I would do maybe some Wimmel build stuff.
Yeah, and here we see some more of these Wimmel builders, and also the book that you talked about that collects a lot of these. So that's a trademark of yours. That's what you've done a lot. But then you also do gag cartoons, like humor comics. Is this also for like commercial customers, like newspapers, or is it something that you just do to be out there on Instagram or in the digital world?
This is for a really small local newspaper. It's kind of a Quartierzeitung, you know. And the one a person I know writes some it's kind of a blog about raising kids, and she gives some inputs and advices about tips about raising kids. So it's, I think, every 2 months. I mean, it's also commercial. I mean, it's not. It's the cool thing is that it's regular, so you don't have to always get into a new setting.
Yeah.
And I just can read what she is telling. It's also a really good exercise for me to read a text and then transforming it to a cartoon, which is only one picture. And normally you have at least 3 pictures, and then you can kind of build up something, and here you have to bring it down to one picture. which
Yeah.
is not easy.
And I think the last example of your work we have here is a strip or a series of strips that was created through on 24-hour Comics Day, right? Is that correct? And
Yes.
how did that emerge? Because I know this institution of 24-hour Comics Day is something where normally artists meet in a room and then for 24 hours they draw comics and they inspire each other, but they sit in the same room. I guess with the pandemic situation, that was probably quite different this last year, or how was it? How did this work out?
I remember it's a place called Alte Kaserne in Winterthur, which does this event since, I don't know, 10 years or even longer. And I always went there because I think it's a really nice thing to have this kind of pressure. I thought this was also good in the pandemic comics. I knew, okay, every day I have to publish something, I have to do something, so this keeps you going. And it was a bit different, but it was, Kati mentioned before that there was this kind of break, I don't know, in summer and also in the beginning of autumn. In Switzerland, it wasn't that restricted, the lockdown. It wasn't really a hard lockdown, so events like this were possible. And it was the last event, and after this weekend everything, I think it was in mid-October, and you had to wear a mask and stuff, but it was really cool because it still was possible to do it. And it was also cool because if you would do this at home, you always do this at home, you're working until, I don't know, 3 o'clock in the morning. And it was really nice to see all those people working on their stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing these images. I'm gonna turn off so we have a chance to see each other again in larger images, and then we can open up a group discussion. Hello again, everyone. First, I'd like to see if there are any questions that you maybe have for each other after seeing and hearing how the other artists have been doing the last year. Is there something that you would like to ask the others at this point?
I don't have a question actually, but sorry. First of all, thank you everybody for speaking English. I guess I'm the only one who can speak Swiss German here, so really thank you. And I wish I could read what I just saw. Understand, but it looked amazing. I just looked, so Wimmelbuch, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but we don't have that word in French actually. I think we use the German word as well. So
Really?
Thank you. So I just discovered it, and thank you. That's super interesting. So yes, or I did read the translation that was livre de promenade. So like taking a walk for your eyes in a way. So yeah, just a note.
Thank you. Any other questions or remarks that you have maybe for each other?
I would be very interesting, Moran, how the French government supports its artists, or if you get any help, financial help from La France.
So actually, yeah, we did have financial help from our government before you guys did, I think. So I don't know, my news from Switzerland are from Geneva, so I don't know about other cantons, but I try to keep updated on how things were going in Switzerland, and so we did get financial help quite fast. I think maybe. Oh no! Wait, it started really fast. I couldn't apply for it at first, and then I could. Yeah, so we artists just had to fill a few conditions to to receive it, but so it was based on your the previous year's income you had, and so if you had a much lower income in 2020, they would give you money to make up for the difference up to a certain amount, and that was actually it's French moment, but this is the kind of things I'm very proud my country is doing. This is like we have this social welfare in France that we fought a lot for and that we're super proud of, and that is being destroyed at the moment by our dearest president. And end of the parentheses, but I was very, very happy and proud that there was this financial help. Yes, so I think so artists get it, and entrepreneurs as well, and like for the restaurant business is down, as you know, and so they get financial help, and hotels as well, and everything.
But how is it in Switzerland, Kati? I think you also said earlier in your talk that in the beginning there was no support, so it was really difficult. But that sort of implied that maybe things changed a bit. How is the situation at the moment?
Yeah, at the moment, I think the situation is better than ever. We really had the whole range from discussions about artists being lazy and what is culture. Everyone can do culture, and really this bad. And also, let's say, a crisis of the institutions. And now, like, Samuel, you have to help me. Was it last week? I guess one of Jacqueline Fair, one of the Stadtrat here in Zurich, she actually was successful by providing ein kind of bedingungsloses Grundeinkommen. Please translate that.
Unconditional basic income.
Exactly, for all of the cultural workers, and also not only artists, but also people who help to provide stages, to sound design, and everyone. So they actually, it's based on a fictive salary of 4,800 Swiss francs, and then you kind of abziehen, you take away what you actually earned in these months, and what you could have through the assurances, because we also have insurances who pay insurances. Is this a word? Okay. So theoretically everyone now can apply for this. You actually, I did it today, and it was funny because I had to prove that I was an actual cultural worker. So how to prove that? Because you're not allowed to send any pictures or give some links to projects you did. So you have a form, a tabelle, and then 2016, 17, 18, 19, you have 5 works. You have to describe what you did. So just describe in words. Illustration for a Wimmelbuch, for example.
But was it? It's only the city of Zurich, right?
Yes.
Who does it like this? And I think also Basel has a similar system. But
cool
I just wanted to say this because I mean, if you're not living in Zurich, then you don't have. So it's really cool that they did this, because there is also lots of people working in the cultural environment. I know, so it's really nice. And I mean, it isn't that much money compared to like other businesses.
Yeah.
Do you know how it is for Geneva? I'm actually not sure. Do they have financial help? I'm not even sure.
Yes, they do. But if you're self-deployed and paying AHV, and then you can kind of, if you have more than, I think, 50% of loss of damage because you have no income, then you can apply for 80% of the Durchschnittssalary of last year.
Okay, yeah. So that's good. I actually remember
Check it out.
Yeah, I will. I remember that in Geneva they had also so Lockdown in France, everything has been much stricter in France so far and more authoritarian and authoritative, maybe. Anyways, so I remember, and that was such good news that bookstores were open in Switzerland when they were closed in France, and that was such a relief to read it like from my other country. It was like, yay, go guys.
We have to just keep an eye on the clock, I see, because I think our hour is almost up. I would just like to briefly, to summarize, ask you, you've experienced this year now, this very exceptional year, and you've somehow managed to stay motivated and you've managed to stay creative. And I think that's something that probably not only the artists in the audience, but people in general can learn from. So maybe could you summarize, in times like this, hopefully they won't last for too much longer, but in times like this, what's the secret method to stay motivated and to stay creative? How would you summarize that?
I guess the most important thing for everybody, artist or not, is to keep in mind that we are going through extremely tough times, especially for our mental and physical health, and you have to be kind on yourself. It's the most important thing. So as it was said before, as Katy said, you don't have to produce your masterpiece because you have time. You don't have to produce anything. If you are having anxiety, you can just lay down and keep it cool. I think it's throughout your whole artistic career, that's really important to do things on your own terms and on your own rhythm. And so if you try to find out how to get inspired, and if you can, make something, but no pressure. That's that. I think a lot of people, a lot of artists got anxiety really early in the lockdown because everybody was like, hey, it's time to create now, and some people couldn't. And so find your own way to make the most of it, and just take care of yourself. That's it.
Well, when I prepared this podium, I come to realize that my actually secret surviving tool is proactivity, like total proactivity. I can show you my sketchbook. Like kind of manic proactivity. And this really helped me out to deal with reality. And what I also learned, which is referring to what Moran said, is that I ask for help. I mean, in Switzerland, I know a lot of people, it's extremely hard for them to ask for help and not be, always have to work and to deal it out with your own savings, to deal it out, this Leistungsgesellschaft. So I can 100% agree to what Moran said. Take it easy, wait for you with your opus magnum a little bit, and do what you can, and ask for help, and don't be ashamed to ask for help, and talk about it, and talk also about money and salary. And we founded this in the middle of the pandemic. We founded a union for illustrators, and exactly with that goal to stand up for your rights, talk about salaries, and talk about help, financial help, and stand together and join collectives. Yes.
Sam, would you like to add something?
Yes, I think I don't know, as a really sometimes lazy person, it's important to me to, I don't know, these Instagram comics helped me to kind of do something daily, and also afterwards being proud of that I did it. But I also agree with Moran and Kati to just relax, because these comics were not that, I don't know, if I read them now, some of them are a bit bad, but that wasn't really the point for me. For me, it was important to do something every day and to draw, and also kind of to to use this time, but without pressure. I didn't think about like, I have to do a really big project and my best work. It was just to do stuff, because that really makes you also more self-confident about your work. When you see, okay, I found that a really nice idea of more on drawing the film stills, and watch as many movies as you can. I did that as well, watching lots of documentaries on Swiss television, which is really inspiring for me for my comics. So yes, it was really, I agree with all of you.
Yeah. Great, thank you very much for sharing that. We have to wrap it up here because the next event is already lined up in the Fumetto program. So thanks a lot once again for sharing all these insights, and hope to see you again at another Fumetto in real life again, and enjoy the rest of the weekend programming. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you. Stay healthy.
Same, stay healthy.
Woof, genau.